What's going on, everybody? Tony Mui here, and I'm joined by Kenneth Anand and Jared Goldstein, co-founders of Sneaker Law and co-authors of the Sneaker Law book. There's a lot of drama that's happened in the last 2 weeks with one person named Michael Malazadeh, also known as Zadeh Kicks. Lay out all the facts for us. What do we know about this federal investigation?
Sure. So Zadehkicks was a huge reseller in Oregon. I mean, he's been active since 2013, I believe. And he would do pre-orders for new drops that were coming out months in advance. So we're talking heat, whether it's Off-White, Travis. He was in the game for years, and people slowly but surely started having problems with him. If you actually take a look at his Better Business Bureau profile, you can see complaints dating back to 2020. And what he would do is he would take large amounts of money from people and start to not fulfill those pre-orders. And it seems that, and this is what I'm hearing, he would initiate large orders that were pre-orders that weren't releasing for months, take the money from those pre-orders and use that money to fulfill previous pre-orders. And that would be the cycle. I've also heard that he would actually buy the sneakers from, traditional resale sources like StockX, and then fulfill those orders based off of those orders. And it kind of looks like, the classic pyramid or Ponzi scheme. For those of you who may not know what a Ponzi scheme is, it's kind of a form of fraud where you pay investors with funds from more recent investors. And it was just a cycle where it didn't really even matter if he was making money or not off of these transactions. He was just really using borrowed money, to fulfill these sneaker orders and to run his business. And this was being done until it imploded. And I actually have some sources with knowledge on the matter and from some of the affected parties, and we're talking 3 or 4 different people, and just from those 3 or 4 people alone, millions of dollars. So there's a lot more other people involved. So talking a lot of money here.
So essentially, this guy's like the sneaker swindler.
You should trademark that. Exactly.
Damn, somebody's going to take it right now. Shit, I'm late, man.
You got Sneaker Law here, so we can help you out with that. But
okay, yeah.
Let's talk about what's happening and what happens when a company files for dissolution and gets appointed a receiver. So normally when things don't work out at a company, you decide to dissolve a business. And that's normally when the debts exceed the profits. And certainly that was the case here. What makes this interesting is that they were in such dire financial straits that they had a court-appointed receiver. And, a receiver is basically a neutral third-party professional that's appointed by the court system to help repay the debts and creditors and hopefully get the business back on track. In a receivership, a receiver acts on behalf of both the company and the creditors. So they try to work out an amicable solution. It's almost like mediation for finances. So let's say you, Tony, have $300,000 that you're owed by Zadeh. The receiver might say, oh, well, I have a certain amount of assets that I can apportion across all these creditors. Would you be willing to take 25 cents on the dollar? And you might say, hell no, like I want my 300K. But that's the process of how it's all worked out. And in the end, if they can't work it out and the creditors exceed the amount of debts that they're able to pay back, then they may have to place the business into bankruptcy. But, it's a long and drawn out process. And as you see from some of the things that have been posted online, there have been hundreds of calls placed to the receiver. He's inundated. He shut down his phone. He said, no more calls. Hold up. Let's figure out where all this is and let's take a pause. And in the meantime, my understanding is nobody can find this guy Zadeh, or he bounced after he placed the company into receivership.
So he's basically a fugitive at this point, right? FBI's after him. They're trying to find him. He's probably with the guy Simone.
He's Harrison Ford right now.
For the record, I jumped to conclusions and I said he was on the run. There is no confirmed actual information that he's actually on the run. So, we're just playing conspiracy theorists at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if they're trying to find him or not, but it has turned into an FBI criminal investigation because they're really serious allegations. So they're trying to get to the bottom of it. They want to know what happened to all the money. And, on the website, there's a notice that says, if you're affected, please call the FBI. So it's serious. I mean, you're talking about a civil matter turning into a criminal matter. So, it's really crazy stuff to think that sneakers could turn into an FBI criminal investigation. But just like any other business, if you're committing fraud, you're subject to these types of penalties and investigations.
After all the discovery process is over and the receiver has an idea of how many creditors there are out there and how much funds he has to work with, the good thing is that there'll be a well-documented process of informing people, okay, well, there'll be how much progress has happened in repaying the debts, how many creditors there are at stake, what the preference is of each creditor, meaning some people may have higher preference. They may have been owed debts earlier than other people. So unfortunately, if you just jumped on the Zadeh bandwagon a year ago, you might not be getting your money before someone who's owed from 2 years ago. But there's a well drawn out process to how this all goes down.
So right now, as of today, the receiver is still tallying up numbers of the assets that is being owed. How long do you think he's been doing this and been getting away with it?
I mean, it's hard to tell the exact amount of years, but like I said, on the Better Business Bureau's website, I was looking at it, and there was complaints that were indicative of everything that's happening right now, dating back to 2020. So I don't know, maybe the profile was created in 2020, so it could be before then. But I mean, it seems like it was going on for a while, and that's like the classic Ponzi scheme. It continues to go and go and go until it just implodes, and you're in a huge mess like we are right now.
Yeah, and let's just break it down into sneaker terms, like how we can get to a place like this. So let's say, for example, you got the Armand Monniers dropping tomorrow, the 2s, right? And he takes pre-orders for that shoe in the amount of $500,000 for like 1,000 pairs. We know the shoe retails for $350, but he might say, okay, you pay me $500 per pair so that I can guarantee you'll get your shoes. Right now, he can't fulfill those 1,000 pairs. He can only fulfill maybe, let's say, 500 of them from his plugs. But now he has to go out and get the other 500 because all those people have paid for the shoe. But the other 500 that he's getting, he has to buy off of resale sites just to fulfill those orders. So he might pay over $500 for those pairs. Now he's in the red on that amount. But he knows that there's another drop coming up soon for, let's say, the Jordan 4 SB. So he takes pre-orders on that and he funds the deficit for the Armand Monniers with those monies. And it keeps going until it's too big for his britches and he just can't, he's swimming so deep in debt that he can't fulfill it with new pre-orders. People have caught on to him and said, I'm not giving you more money until I get paid for the old stuff you owe me. And that's how the whole thing falls apart.
Now, I've jumped into a couple of Twitter spaces and I've been, listening, and I've also watched a couple of YouTube videos about this. And it turns out this guy, Zadeh Kicks, been offering like bulk pre-orders for less than retail. Like, how's that even possible? Maybe that's just to entice more victims. I don't know. It's almost like one of those too good to be true things, right? Where all you really need is just to sucker them into wire transferring you a lump sum of money, and then you're good, right?
It's like those Fugazi ads on IG. They're like, oh, I'm getting a pair of off-white ones for $120, and the wife who wants to get her husband the gifts, like, okay, I'm gonna get duped. It's kind of similar,
Yeah. And I understand. Yeah. I understand a lot of his shoes were legit checked and found to be authentic. So if that's the case, then it's possible that he had wholesale accounts that he was tapping into, but those might have gotten shut down by Nike and other brands over the years as they moved to more of a D2C role. And so he might have been, crunched just like Foot Locker or some of these other retailers, and found that his plugs are no longer giving him under retail prices. And so but he might have been already so deep in that he tried to get himself out with some clever resale buys that didn't pan out.
Yeah. I mean, I think that it could be that, but also, he doesn't care at this point. Like I mentioned earlier, it doesn't matter if he's making a profit or not. He just needs some source of funding for the previous order. And it's just that never ending cycle, so he doesn't care if he's losing $100 off of a pair of sneakers, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter.
What can some of the victims do? Some of the smaller victims, I don't know if that's the proper term, but like, people that place like, I don't know, maybe like order for like 13 pairs or even 15 pairs of shoes, not like thousands, right? What can they do, like in terms of like, PayPal? Because I know some of them cross the threshold of 180 days. I believe was that 6 months? I
mean, they certainly can try to, contact their banks or their credit cards and do chargebacks and see if that works. But if you're talking about the actual legal proceedings, like Kenneth mentioned earlier, there's going to be an order of preference So you're talking about the real big creditors who are owed upwards of in the hundreds of thousands or maybe even millions, where they're going to get taken care of first. And then those smaller individuals or the people who have, are owed lesser amounts of money, they're really going to get the bottom of the barrel if there's anything left after that. So, I think that the best way to go is, as long as it was recent, the transaction was recent, is to try to file a charge back. But otherwise, if you're going to go through the legal proceeding, it might be tough to recover any amount of money.
Say they catch this guy, right? And they completely squeeze him dry of all his assets. The people at the bottom of the barrel, there is a chance that they just won't get anything because he's all squeezed dry, right?
So let's first assume that he hasn't done anything wrong. Like an LLC would shield his assets from personal liability and he wouldn't have to pay anything. But the fact that the FBI is now involved seems to indicate that they believe that there's some criminal activity, in which case he could be forced to pay. I mean, this is Bernie Madoff all over again, just in the world of sneakers, and he could be forced to pay back these amounts. He could do jail time. And that's highly likely if that's what's going on.
When you have an LLC, you have the shield. It's called the corporate veil, and it could be pierced through different actions, and fraud is one of them. So we're talking about fraud here. And if that's decided that fraud was committed, then that disappears and he could be personally liable.
Just to tack onto that, like a receivership is not necessarily something indicating criminal activity yet. A lot of companies just can't pay their debts and need help. It's like almost like declaring personal bankruptcy and saying, I need help, I need to restructure. And if that's the case and he's able to pay down some of these debts and come back into business properly, then everything should be good. However, there's a lot of speculation around the fraud aspect of it. And Jared's right. If that's the case, then there would be personal liability and there would also be criminal liability.
Do you guys think the brands care about this at all? Or is there something that they can actually do to prevent this from happening?
I mean, brands typically stay silent on these types of resale activities and these types of frauds. Like they always say, well, we're the source and we can't really do much about what happens after it leaves our fulfillment center. If in fact there's some angle where he was getting kicks directly from the source, whether it be any brand, then they would have to speak out on that. And, that's to be seen. None of us know where he's getting these kicks and how he was getting them for the prices he was able to sell them at.
What do you think this means for other mass resellers and pre-order services?
I mean, I think that it's bringing light to some of the downsides of reselling and some of the dark sides of reselling. I mean, if you're pro resale, it could be a good thing for you because now you're going to be more cognizant. You can do your due diligence when you're conducting transactions, when you're purchasing sneakers, and then also on the flip side, when you're buying sneakers, you want to make sure whoever you're buying from is legitimate, as long as you're not going through the normal channels, StockX, Go, Stadium Goods. But if you're anti-resale, I mean, if you're engaging in this type of activity, maybe, I think it's about time that something like this would happen. That's what people may think about it, So it's a double-edged sword, I think.
I mean, it's a hustle, it's like any hustle. And there's going to be people that out hustle the hustlers and come up with clever ways to make more and more money. And those aren't always legal. And so, unless the government steps in like they did with ticket sales back in the day and stopped bots and stopped all kinds of fraudulent third-party activity, then we're going to keep seeing people that are more and more clever step into this space and run away with our money.
How do you think this plays out?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it looks too good for Zadeh. I mean, these are serious allegations, and he owes people a lot of money. And when the FBI is involved, usually, it's not too favorable for you. Like, people look at sneakers, like I see resellers all the time, like they think it's some small little thing. And, oh, do you even have to pay taxes on sneakers? Like, of course you have to pay taxes, obviously, but this is a legitimate business. And people make a lot of money. Even if you're a low-level reseller and an individual, you still make a lot of money. And, with that comes potential consequences. If you do anything that's illegal, you're going to be subject to this type of scrutiny. So I think that, it's something to consider when you're flipping a pair of sneakers, is that, you are conducting yourself in a business manner and you have to act accordingly, so.
Yeah, and I think this is the start of a wave of activity that we're going to see where people are going to be cracking down on income that's gained from this resale trade. You already see some of the resale platforms asking you to fill out W-2 forms for W-9 forms for your 1099 income that you're getting over $1,000 in a year, and it's going to be tighter and tighter. So, but for Zadeh, I agree with Jared. He's got it coming to him. It's not going to be good for our boy.
I think it's safe to say usually when the federales are involved, it's like a 99.9% success rate that they're going to like catch you, right? So completely side question. What do you think is going to happen to Young Thug and Gunner? Because RICO charges are like kind of crazy, man.
I saw Gunner was denied bail, so that's not a good sign. You know, that means that they think he's a flight risk and that they have real allegations against him. There's a lot of speculation I see in the comments that the feds are using their lyrics against them and there is actually no criminal activity. But I'm not a criminal lawyer. I'm a sneaker lawyer, so I can't really say. They're pushing P though, either way.
That doesn't even sound right when you like when people say that in court, right? It's almost like, yo, I'm pushing a lot of drugs or whatever.
I know. It doesn't sound good.
I think it's a fine way to conclude this interview. Gentlemen, is there anything else that I didn't cover?
I mean, you can get our book at sneakerlaw.com.
Yes, please get that book, sneakerlaw.com. Yes.
And you can better understand this case and many other cases because there's sneaker legal issues in the sneaker industry almost daily these days. Yeah, you can also follow us on socials at Sneaker Law.
I was just hoping to get 60 seconds on the clock with my boy Tony.
Oh, man. 20-minute piece right here. Kenneth, Jared, appreciate you guys. Thank you, everyone, for watching and tuning in. Hope you guys learned something new today, and we'll see you guys next time.